are the first. The first to see the gods. The first to tame their beasts. The first to guard the soul from evil. We conquered this land and built an empire. But there are whispers on the wind. A brotherhood born in the shadows. They are the first to call themselves the Assassins.
All my blood is in there.
Siwa, my home, the sacred oasis.
I thought he was dead.
Our Medjay, the last protector, our prayers are answered. Siwa has not been the same since he left.
I hope you are here to rid us of Medunamur.
Be my eyes, Senu. This temple resembles a fortress. What has happened?
Get out of my way.
There you are, Medunamon. The next masked one on my list. Now it is my turn to tip the balance of Anubis. Better be careful here.
I should go drop these priests in the desert. Let the stand take them.
A fine bow.
If the people see these dead priests, they will surely revolt.
It is too dangerous. I will pass for now. Guide me, Senu. Betunamon. You will die, Medunamun.
Die, you bastard! Going to kill you for that! See what is mine!
Finally.
Kill the flame. They're lining up the prisoners and the guards are taking aim. I struggled with some demons. They were middle class and tame. I didn't know I had permission to murder and to me. the first to see the gods. The first to tame their beasts. The first to guard the soul from evil. We conquered this land and built an empire. But there are whispers on the wind. A brotherhood born in the shadows. They are the first to call themselves the Assassins.
Hey, I'm Ashraf Ismail, Game Director for Assassin's Creed Origins. What would you say is the biggest change to combat in Assassin's Creed from Dylan? So Dylan, the biggest change to Assassin's Creed in terms of combat, it's that we've drastically changed the paradigm of what is fight. So in previous ACs, we used what we call technically a paired animation system, which means when you swing your weapon, the hero and the enemy align, they play an animation together, you wait for the animation to finish, and then you continue fighting. The change we decided, the paradigm that we shifted, is we went to what we call a hitbox system, which means that anytime you swing your weapon, no matter the distance, no matter if there's no one around you, you're gonna swing. And that means, all of a sudden, that distance matters. The speed of your weapons matter. Your position in fight relative to other enemies also matter. Because now if you have a big spear and you're swinging it around, you can hit multiple enemies all at the same time. So all of a sudden, all these parameters of a weapon really matter in the gameplay. So it's not just about the damage anymore, it's really speed, length, position in fight, the number of enemies you're fighting. That's the basis of it, and then from there, we really go deep on what weapons do the enemies have, how do they behave based on the weapon loadout they have. From heavy weapons to fast weapons to shields. All of this has a huge impact on fight and the way as a player you're meant to read the fight and react to it. What kinds of weapons will we be able to use, Megan? Megan, we have a ton of melee weapons and ranged weapons. So if I start with the ranged weapons, there's the hunter bow, which is a more traditional bow. There's the warrior bow, which is, let's say, a shotgun bow. It shoots multiple arrows at the same time and you can focus the spread. There's the rapid fire bow, which is more like a very fast pistol or an Uzi even, where you can really let out a lot of shots very, very fast. And then there's the predator bow, which is the sniper bow. For melee weapons, we have many. So you can fight barehanded. You can fight with a sword and a shield. You can fight with a spear. You can fight with heavy blunt weapons like maces. You can fight with heavy bladed weapons like giant axes. You can fight with what we call a scepter, which is a very fast staff, if you will. Fight dual wielded with two short swords. We also have two major types of attack, which is the light attack and the heavy attack, and these build combos. So each weapon also has a different combo output. So based on how you use the light and heavy, you have a different set of attacks. We want players to discover each weapon, that every new weapon type gives them this learning curve that they need to master and to decide what's their favorite. Big thing that we're pushing in terms of equipment actually is that now it's a very RPG driven system. So all of these types of weapons I mentioned, they all have levels, they all have stats, they all have attributes. So sometimes you can have weapons that are on fire or weapons that can deal poison damage on top of the base damage they do. So we've really delved deep into more RPG type mechanics, but that are still credible in the world. There's a huge amount of depth in the system, and we're excited for people to discover that depth and find that style that they love to play with. How do enemies react in combat? By Sarah. So Sarah, how enemies react in combat? We wanted the fight to be able to get very difficult. If there are too many enemies, we want players to actually back off or figure out a way to take out singular enemies and manage the fight. You cannot fight 8 guys in one shot and be efficient. There are ways for you to actually be able to manage them, but we wanted that if there's a lot of enemies around, you're going to get overwhelmed. We do have the capacity that enemies will attack multiple at the same time. How do you deal with that? So we have a lot of defensive mechanisms. So you have your shield, you have a dodge, you have a parry. So there's a lot of defenses. You have your bows. So one thing we worked on is actually being able to transition between melee combat and the bow very fast, very efficient, without breaking the flow. We wanted players to be able to take a few shots at a guy to slow them down, maybe if they're charging, use their spear to take out the 2 guys that are on their left and go back to the person charging them again. We wanted the fight to be very dynamic and very spontaneous, and that your skill of understanding the enemies, how they behave, their weapon loadout, your weapon loadout, the efficiency of your weapons. We want these things to be constantly running in the player's mind to be an effective fighter in the game.
In recreating ancient Egypt, Assassin's Creed Origins doesn't just give players a city or 3 to explore with some countryside in between. It's building an entire seamless country you can travel freely across. This is the biggest world ever created for an Assassin's Creed game, and it's packed with dynamic things to discover and pursue.
You know, when we started by saying let's do ancient Egypt, it was going to be a country. Ancient Egypt meant many things for us. It meant, yes, cities, but also all the wilderness areas, and we wanted to show the diversity of this wilderness and something that people, as they play the game and get into hours and hours of it, they're constantly seeing new stuff from the world, from the environment.
The team began with a world around the size of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flags, with one important difference: it's all land. Well, it's mostly land. No matter where you are, there's a density to the landscape that creates a feeling that there's always some area you haven't explored, something you haven't uncovered.
In terms of the granularity of the details, the experiences that you can have, the things you can run into, the NPCs, the animals, the fauna, it's much, much more dense. So this is definitely, in terms of content, the biggest world we've ever built. We wanted the exploration of the world to really be jaw-dropping. We wanted people to be lost in this world for hours and hours. So the game is quite huge. The world is massive.
Egypt, even in the game setting of 49 BCE, was never an undifferentiated landscape of deserts, pyramids, and snazzy headgear. It was huge and cosmopolitan, a hub of trade, agriculture, and craftsmanship. From Alexandria to Memphis, Egypt was a place of geographical contrast and cultural diversity, and recreating the entire country as a single open world is one of Assassin's Creed Origins' greatest achievements.
So if you go into Alexandria, it's a very Greek city, very big and broad streets. And then you go into Memphis, it's very crowded. And all of this is based on the historical research that we do. So we learned, for instance, that the Memphis is very close to the Nile, and that the course of the Nile changed with centuries, and that it affected how the city was built. And so in return, that affects the way that we create that city, and that is what players will experience. A city filled with water, with caves, with surrounded by the Nile, with boats around. So very, very nice and rich city. So historical research is very important for us.
Next to capturing the scale and detail of Egypt, the game's biggest task is to fill its vast spaces with interesting things to see and do. The Egypt of Assassin's Creed Origins is a dynamic place, one where you'll always be able to find wildlife to hunt, a secret to uncover, a bandit gang to raid, or a quest to pursue. In fact, you'll need to discover the game's quests on your own, and there are multiple ways to do it. A vital contact might direct you to someone who wants you to check on a friend in danger, for example, or you might just stumble onto that friend while exploring and get pulled into a new adventure. You can even leave a quest at any time, pursue other tasks, and then pick up again from where you left off.
There's tombs and temples to explore, there's puzzles in the world, left by the ancient people. There's a lot of really cool activities to do in the world. There's a huge density there.
Assassin's Creed Origins is set during the reign of Cleopatra, an extremely tumultuous and pivotal era for Egypt, and one that fits in well with the series' preference for periods of conflict, upheaval, and massive societal change.
The game takes place during her ascension to the throne. During this time period, her father, Ptolemy XII, had passed away, and so he left the country into the hands of Cleopatra and her brother, Ptolemy XIII, who's the boy king. And right away there was conflict and strife and a civil war between the two, and Cleopatra gets exiled. And so we catch up to her in our context when she's exiled. And so she's on her way to reclaiming her throne.
Pretty much everyone in Cleopatra's family has been assassinating each other's. So that creates this unique set that's tremendous to create a story and to go around all of this plot.
Ptolemy 13 appears to have the full support of a masked secret society calling itself the Order of the Ancients, and since history tells us the Boy King's power grab was orchestrated mostly by his advisors, it's likely the masked men are behind the Civil War itself.
The Order of the Ancients are trying to control Ptolemy XIII. They believe that he's younger and weak and that they could manipulate him easily. However, they're a secret society and they will always be in Bayek's path, and so you will have to make your way through that.
In any case, Cleopatra would soon have a powerful ally of her own.
And at this point, we have Caesar who shows up at some point chasing after another Roman, Pompey. Pompey came to Egypt in order to be protected, thinking that they had an alliance. But Ptolemy, knowing that Caesar was coming, he decides to assassinate Pompey as a gift to Caesar, which only infuriates Caesar, saying that he was my enemy, but he was also Roman. You cannot kill a Roman like that. And so this pushes him to ally with Cleopatra. And so we get to meet these key central figures. So Caesar being, this legendary tactician, I think one of the most epic historical figures that we can possibly have in the Assassin's Creed series. We wanted our players to experience it sort of as if, for Bayek, these are also at some point gods. Cleopatra, Ptolemy, they're considered to be gods in this world. And as he meets them and he's almost, in awe of who they are, as soon as he meets them and he realizes these are human beings with their own flaws and weaknesses and strengths, and he connects with some, doesn't connect with others. And this is, we want it to be a reflection of how, hopefully our players can also envision these kind of people.
Have them boiled to death inside a bronze bull.
Goddess, no.
They were coerced.
Bayek's quest isn't just about exploring ancient Egypt or defying the Ptolemies, or even fighting the masked agents of the Order of the Ancients. It's about finding a new place in a world whose changing traditions have made him obsolete, and it's a quest that will lead, eventually, to the founding of what we now know as the Assassin Brotherhood.
From the start, we know that assassins are fictive characters, so it's all right. We acknowledge that this is not a documentary, even if we're based off history, even if history is our playground and we like to play with it. So Bayek, within that environment, even though he's fictive and he interacts with real people, we tried to make it believable. That really roots him into the realm of Egypt.
Assassin's Creed Origins is coming October 27th for Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC. To find out more, check out the other videos on this channel and visit us at Ubiblog.